Have you ever had questions? I mean, real questions. Questions not only for your spouse or for your family, but existential questions for the one up there. I have. And I imagine you have too. Well, our story for today is about Abram. And Abram has a conversation with God. And Abram, who later becomes Abraham, is a pillar of faith. He's the father of 3 major world religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. He's a patriarch of Genesis. Many times in church, we point to Abraham as how to live out a faithful life. But in our story for today, we get a glimpse of Abraham not simply blindly following God, but pausing for a moment of questioning. So let's put Abraham over here and God over here. And God says, Abram, I'm going to give you a great reward. And Abraham goes, well, that's great and all, but I don't have any children. Me and my wife have not had any children. You have not blessed us with children. All I have is my trusted servant Eliezer. How are you going to do this? And God simply says, I'm going to do it. And you're going to get a child. And you're going to get an heir. And in fact, not only are you going to get an heir, let's go outside and let's look at all the stars. And if you can count all of the stars, I'm going to give you more descendants than that number. Now, if I were Abraham, which I'm not, but if I were Abraham, I imagine in that moment my jaw would simply drop. How are you going to do this? But Abraham doesn't question anymore. He simply says, okay. But that moment of saying, hey, God, how's this going to happen, is a faithful moment. If the patriarch Abraham, who is the epitome of living a faithful life, can have a moment of questioning, so can we. I imagine that you have questions too. Questions maybe just like Abraham and Sarah. I know that you have called me to a family, God, except currently I'm childless. When are you going to bless me with children? Or perhaps you've been working in your job for decades. And you go, God, I don't know that I have enough saved for retirement. Or what if, when you hear the doctor tell you that you have cancer, that you go, God, I don't even know what question to ask, but I'm wondering where you are. These are all faithful questions, because these questions are a question directly to God, inviting God into the conversation into our lives. Just like with Abraham and God, God showed Abraham just how many descendants he would have. So too in these moments, we are inviting God in. Now, don't hear me say that prayer is a salve. It will fix everything. It'll fix a lot, but we have real questions. And I don't know what the answers to the questions will be. I don't. And I know that each answer to every question will be different for each of you. But here's what I do know. I know that God claimed each of you in your baptism. And in fact, God didn't just simply claim you the moment that that water went on your forehead and the Trinitarian words were said over you. No, God claimed you before that. Just like God and Abraham were having conversations long before our story for today. And it is in this claiming that God deeply invites us into relationship. And where God says, there's no question that you have that is bigger than me. I also wonder about this community, this church community. I know you're in a bit of a time of transition. And I would guess that you would have questions. Lots of questions. Questions like, who's going to be our interim pastor? Are they going to make changes? What kind of changes are they going to make? Am I going to like those changes? What's the future of this church? I don't know. I don't know the answers to these questions. But I can tell you that God has claimed this church long before today. God called this church out of nothingness a few decades ago. The nothingness that was outskirts of Overland Park. And blessed you all with numerous members. Gave you all an incredible campus. Has led you to ministries like a youth bell choir, a youth church choir, an incredible youth group. You help with IHN and Meals on Wheels and ministries that I don't even know about. You have numerous children who were up here at the front this morning. God has claimed this church and is bigger than any questions that you all have. Just like with Abraham and God. The faithful questions that Abraham was asking to God allowed God to illuminate God's will and God's plan. Abraham's questions were not questions of doubt. They were questions of saying, okay, God, you've said this. How are we going to do this together? And this is what questions are. They are a faithful response to God's movement and God's call in our lives. So I'm really excited. I got to be honest with you. I'm really excited about what the next steps for this church are. I don't know how these questions are going to be answered, and I don't know when you will know when these questions will be answered, but I got to tell you, this is an incredible church that God has been with for many years and has already claimed and will be with for many years more. And I know God will continue to work with you all and through you all to live out the ministries for God's people. Doesn't that make you excited? So I invite you all in this time of Lent to perhaps be in Abraham's posture, a posture of open questioning. What's next? Where are we going? How are you going to do this, God? And see how God answers. And let me know when you find out. Amen.